What is going on, Clippers fans? Welcome to Season 2, Episode 27 of Clips and Dip. I am Chuck Mockler, joined by Adam Oslin and William Updike. Welcome to all the new fans. If you're still a fan after what happened last night, hey, we're still here. We're all still here. I'm bringing some positive energy because things are going to take a nosedive because we're going to talk about what the Clippers did last night, which was terrible. We're going to talk the Ty Lue hot seat after what might happen when we're up in the Bay. We don't know if there's anything happening there. There's some James Harden things to discuss. One game really derailed the vibes for the Clippers, I guess, is kind of the theme of this show. Before we get into basketball stuff, hello to my co-hosts. How are you doing, Adam and Will? Adam, we'll start with you. Outside of basketball, what's going on?
Everything's fucked. I'm kidding. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to start like that.
So good.
I apologize, guys. I'm mostly kidding. My life's great. I am living a charmed life, and I'm lucky to be able to cover this team.
My life's great.
And I'm happy to be on with you guys.
All right. Will, how are you doing? Sunshine, rainbows?
Yeah. Yep. That's right on. Yeah, I don't know. It's dark, man. I feel like it's really, really dark right now. I'm just rocking the Colonel. I pounded a chicken sandwich on air before we started recording. So yeah, I'm clearly putting my body through the ringer the same way the Clippers have put me through a ringer emotionally.
If we had a Patreon, we would have a tier where we would just send you the video of Will eating the sandwich before the podcast.
This is not even a diet soda. This is a full sugar soda. Because I don't care. I don't care anymore.
All right, let's get into it. That's a perfect segue. I don't care anymore is a good way to kind of talk about this. Do we want to revisit what happened, or we just kind of want to dive into the William Updike question at hand? Now that we've had some time to think it over, I don't know if I feel more rational.
I mean, it's a jumping off point, right? If we go to the question, we're still going to talk about what happened last night. Sure. I think we have to.
All right.
Basically, I was talking to Chuck, and I don't know. These two games, it's a tale of two Clippers. It's two very different teams. And I'm left wondering what says more about who this team is and where they're actually at. Is it the win over the Mavericks or this loss to the Denver Nuggets, who, can I be honest, it wasn't even the Denver Nuggets. It was the Denver Ignite or whatever their G League affiliate is. Sorry for not knowing that off top, but like, this is ridiculous. You're going to tell me that a team that started Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan in the year of our Lord and Savior 2023 beat the Clippers that were fully healthy?
Yeah, two separate double-digit comebacks in that game by the aforementioned Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan Nuggets. Yeah, I think because it's so fresh in our minds, I think it's the Nuggets game. But Adam, go ahead. You look like you want to go off, which is fair.
No, it's definitely the Nuggets game because this team is still recovering from losing 6 straight. They're not out of the woods yet. They could have just gotten back to 500 had they won last night. And it was telling from the opening tip, just a lethargic, lackadaisical, low effort type of game from the Clippers. You could see it. It would have been shocking if it was a 12:30 start, which is more expected when it comes to these slow, ease into it, sleepwalking Clippers performances. This was a game where they had a day off.
I just hate how every team, all other 29 teams in the league have the script. You're down, guys. You want to beat the Clippers? Play hard. They're going to lose. They're going to crumble. That's literally it. That's the only thing you have to do. Play hard from the opening tip, and you will beat this team at full strength, at whatever. You have a better than 50% shot of beating this team.
I couldn't be more disappointed with the level of, as the kids say, unserious basketball that we saw in that game, where there was a defensive effort that borderlined on unprofessional, offensively too.
well, the weird part, sorry to cut you off, but the defensively part that you're talking about, a lot of it was Kawhi. Kawhi played a horrific game defensively. He was losing guys behind him. He was getting back cut. It was so uncharacteristic of his entire, just him. And it was just baffling.
Everybody checked out. Everybody thought they had a free win. It was the exact opposite of the Dallas game, which was so impressive considering it was the second night of a back-to-back and they looked like the fresher team and they had bounce and juice out there and they were connected defensively, especially in the second half against Luka Doncic with the game plan and giving him different looks and blitzing and firing, getting the ball out of his hands and then rotating and covering for one another, helping the helper. This was, I don't even know. I think it's the worst regular season loss in the 2-1-3 era. I really do. And that could be recency bias, but considering where this team is at, they just added James Harden. They had an opportunity to get to 500. It looked like a team that was so disinterested. I think they would have had a better chance last night if the Nuggets were just fully healthy. I honestly think they just went into the ball game. 2 hours beforehand. Now Jokic is out too. Okay, we can get away with just rolling the ball out there and figuring it out on the fly, not running much offense, overcompensating with trying to get Kawhi Leonard more shots to a point where it became a detriment, where it was just so much isolation basketball and there was no flow out there whatsoever with anyone else. James Harden continues not to take shots, not to be aggressive on the offensive end, to turn down a catch and shoot three, which ends up being, I don't know if that was a missed shot or a turnover. Take your pick in the fourth quarter. Do you have the
turnover? It was a turnover to Zoo. I know exactly what possession you're talking about because I tweeted out from the Clips and Dip Twitter. Sometimes when you catch it, you have to shoot it, James. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you gotta shoot it right after you catch it. I think you might be right that this is the worst loss in the 2-3 era regular season. I think we can say, because this stat is from Justin Russo. Prior to Monday night, the Clippers had won 128 consecutive games when entering the fourth quarter, leading by more than 10 points. They'd won 128. This is the first time in 129 games that they lost the game leading by double digits in the fourth quarter against, as Will said, some of the Nuggets. Great game from Reggie Jackson, DeAndre Jordan. Revenge is a hell of a thing. We have to appreciate the spitefulness, I guess, at which they played because it worked, but it coincided with an incredible lack of effort from the Clippers.
They let them get that victory in that fashion because of the way they played. There was a point where Reggie Jackson, I think, hit 13 straight shots.
Sure.
I mean, he was cooking them in the pick and roll to a degree. And they're going to see De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis tomorrow. We'll talk more about that coming up.
Like you can't stop this. Like
what? They weren't even playing it hard. They weren't connected at all. It was like they were seeing it for the first time. It was like they didn't know who Reggie Jackson was, a guy who lives for these moments, who of course was going to get up for this game and knew he had the green light. Are you kidding me? He got up for them in the preseason and was trying to go right at Kawhi and Paul George. And Paul George, by the way, I don't want a huge overreaction. It was awful. It was easily his worst game of the season. 2 for 13. He also was very bad defensively when he was leading that charge, really, against the Dallas Mavericks with the focus that he had on that end. I don't know what happened in that game. And the shots he was taking in the fourth quarter that he was missing extremely bad. It was shocking, that type of loss. It was lose your basketball powers, Space Jam, overly used cliche type stuff by the Clippers.
Well, and I think at least a lot of the conversation that I've been seeing is like, this is being put on Russ. This is being put on James, especially, given the trade and the players, the high effort, high motor players that we gave up in that trade. And that's just not what I saw. I thought this loss was so discouraging because of how poorly Kawhi and Paul George played. Like, that to me was what it was. And I mean, Charles, you posted the record earlier. They played 16 games together in the young season. about as much as you could hope. They're 7-9.
Yeah, it's quite literally as many games as you could possibly hope for them to play together at this point.
We went from this area where, hey, if the Clippers are healthy, they've always won at a 700 winning percentage when Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are both available. And it's just been health concerns and setbacks and not having enough continuity because of that. Now you get 16 straight games with them and you're 2 games under 500. And by the way, this was, I would say, the third really bad loss, because that loss to Memphis is also confounding. I don't care that they were working in James Harden, as they still are, and it was even earlier then. I don't care in Brooklyn, that loss they had where Cam Thomas goes out early in the third quarter and they're already missing half their guys, and Mikal Bridges did nothing. Just like Michael Porter Jr., who went 3 of 13 last night somehow.
Right.
I had a caller say, no, Denver was down 4 guys because Michael Porter Jr. had such a bad game. Of course, he hit that 3-pointer late as the Clippers didn't get back in time to put a hand in his face. I've never seen anything like it. Not with a team with this much talent.
That is the issue. That is what has been making me want to bang my head against the wall all day. We're not a plucky team. We have a team of 4 Hall of Famers. We have a team of guys who, even if they have to, remember we talked about the worst case scenario win. I can't remember what game it was, but it was when the Clippers kind of just needed to rely on being top heavy, and it worked out, and they got the win. I'll look up what episode it was, but like that is now somehow a stretch. Like now for me, it's a stretch that we're going to be like, we can't be too top heavy for the Nuggets down 3 guys. Like where
3
does this...
starters down 3 starters is insane.
And people are
Paul
obviously
George should be able to have a bad shooting game, and you still have 3 other Hall of Famers that can pull you through.
Exactly. And people are upset. We got a note from Sports Guy 808. He said, can we just talk about how all offseason they were saying how they were going to take the regular season more seriously and how they wanted to get younger and more athletic? Just now fast forward 16 games in the season and suffer these same, as you said earlier, unserious losses. That's been the prevailing thing on Clippers Twitter, on anyone who has watched the team. As Clippers fans, you also sometimes get texts from people who you never really talk to, but they will hit you up when the Clippers lose. Got a lot of those last night. It's just maddening. We're just here again. We're in the same place we were last year. It's just, I know they didn't really have anything rolling, but it feels like it's all unraveled, if that makes sense.
They came out so unfocused in that first quarter. Kawhi had it going. I think he had 9 in the first, but he had 2 unbelievably bad turnovers. So uncharacteristically bad. Kawhi's not a guy that has those just brain fart type of turnovers. I have trouble rationalizing or reconciling what we saw yesterday. And just, I know Coach Lue said pregame that they have to focus on them and not worry about who's available for the Denver Nuggets. I'm sure the team knew that. I don't know what else he could have said. He was fired up on the sidelines. At what point does it come down to the players? And I posted that Kawhi quote after they took down the Houston Rockets post game, where he said at some point the light has to go on. The message has been there. The coaches can only do so much. At some point, either the light goes on.
There were some baffling decisions, which I think we're going to talk about in the next segment. But there were also, this is firmly on.
But no one was trying.
I agree with that, but there were some baffling decisions made.
I'm not saying Coach Lue was close to perfect in that game, and we got to talk about some of those decisions too. I'm just saying, effort alone would have won this game. Instead, they thought they could just out-talent the Denver Nuggets, and they got outworked. If they just had a bad shooting night, but they still played hard, they would have won the game.
They thought they could out-talent, but they got outworked is an all-time line. That's a perfect, sadly, encapsulation of a lot of the Clippers' losses.
Doesn't it feel like, we've talked about this before, but this team plays like they already have won a championship sometimes. Like they know they have this flip that they can switch, like they're the early 2000s Lakers with Kobe and Shaq that would consistently play down a competition and then turn it around in the second half and get victories. But you'd give them the benefit of the doubt because they had the hardware. They had the trophies to prove it. This team plays sometimes like they're owed something just because of the names out there. And it's just hard. It's hard to see that. I don't understand it. I mean, look, they've had obviously great runs. They got to the Western Conference Finals. They've had great focus at times in the regular season. And maybe they come through and win the next 2 games and they shut everybody up. And it was just a little blip. And you can say, okay, this is more who this team is. But after this loss, and I mentioned the 2 other ones, there's just no excuse. Inexcusable loss last night for the Clippers, and maybe they're worse of the 2-1-3 era. I just couldn't believe what I was watching.
It was pathetic. It was a pathetic effort. It was a pathetic loss. I mean, we talked about this earlier in the season, but like, how do you not get tired of this? I just don't know how you. I don't know how you, as a human being, just like on a human being level, are not tired of getting of showing up late and getting washed by like lesser talent on your home floor. Like, I just don't, I don't get it. Yeah. And I think that's the reason that this loss says more to me. I've certainly had more to say about this than even the win over the Mavs, because I think we see flashes, and for 5 years now, we've seen flashes, but that's not, to me, who they are. And that's not who they've been the majority of the time.
Well, and last night, they played defense down the stretch. Getting outscored by 20 in a quarter is very hard to do. And they only put up 16 points. Denver had 36, but they played defense at times against Reggie Jackson in the pick and roll, where it looked like they knew they had some potent offense on the other end, and all they'd have to do is get a few stops here and there defensively, and their offense is so good, like it's some Mike D'Antoni 7 seconds or less, or Mike D'Antoni with James Harden offense, and all you got to do is be mediocre defensively, and that'll be good enough because you're just so damn good offensively. Well, that offense is not there yet. It has not arrived. James Harden isn't being aggressive enough still.
Oh, yeah, we're going to talk the Harden stuff, but your point about the defense is great. Because for a while,
and also, can I say, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Chuck. How the hell can you be aggressive if the ball isn't in your hands? How the hell can you control everything if one player is taking every shot, and not even good shots at that? And I love Kawhi, and I know that he can do some incredible things. Obviously, he's the peak of what we can achieve in the offseason. But sometimes, man, I'm just not like it seems like he's not elevating the team around him in the way that he grew up playing. Like in his introduction to the league, like firmly Spurs team basketball. And I don't know what's going on there. I don't know why we've added more and more talent, and there's more and more of a disconnect. And the team just continues to look worse.
They're still shooting about 25% in clutch time minutes. They've had 4 of those games since they went to this new starting lineup with Terrence Mann. And before that, they were shooting 25% as a team before this new starting lineup. Now they're at 27% in the last 5 minutes of games.
How many assists are they averaging in that time? Is it 1?
Not many.
The
defense was good enough that they're still 2-2 in those 4 games recently in clutch time minutes, but it's unbelievably bad offense.
So that's the thing. The defense has been carrying this team. When they win, it's a lot of the times because the defense is phenomenal. In the Lakers game, it wasn't very good, and they lost. And then in most of their wins, the defense has been what we've supposed to see. The talk about clutch time, Lob Murray had a great tweet. Lob Murray was saying a lot of good things on Twitter today. He said, reality is that the Clippers are very easy to defend late in games, especially if you can hit their stars legally. The ball doesn't move. Bodies don't move, and stars are surrounded by unwilling or able shooters. Not so sure what the last part is about. I can see it maybe on some certain lineup changes, which we will talk about in the next segment, but he's 100% right. When this team, we wanted this team to be kind of this drive, kick, swing team. And in the clutch time, we would see, last season, some flashes of like, oh, they're really breaking it down in the real half-court offense. Gone. That's gone now. It's not totally pound the ball and wait for something to happen, but it's pretty close to it. It's pass the ball and then see what happens.
Here's what someone asked me on Twitter earlier today about that
Oh,
when I put up
no.
the new clutch time stats. He said, no. He said, I am the system. Best ever will be. I don't know who this is, but they got a picture of Heisenberg in Breaking Bad. He said, we must ask what we can do to improve this, replying to my tweet about the clutch time offense.
Not be a
My
clutch
response is this. Get the bleeping ball in James Harden's hands, run pick and roll, and play off of that, just like they did when they went on that 12-1 run against the Houston Rockets and actually looked like they had a real system offensively during crunch time.
So that is a perfect segue into the next segment. We need to talk about James Harden's offensive things right now, one of which is the pick and roll and him being passive. But before we go to that, Will, do you have anything else you want to say before we give these folks to an ad break about last night specifically?
Cook, Will.
No.
Cook like the sandwich you ate right before we went on.
Cook like the Colonel, buddy. All right,
No,
we are moving on.
I can't fester on this anymore.
We're moving on. Dude, I was looking at PJ Tucker game logs today. We're going to get into how gross things got. We're going to talk about James Harden's offensive situation because there is a situation happening. We're going to be talking PJ Tucker's non-scoring streak. We're going to be talking some of the people who maybe aren't sure about Ty Lue. We're going to talk about that coming up after this break. We do have to pay some bills. The ads have been too loud for you. Go ahead and turn it down. We got ads coming up, and then we're talking all that stuff I just said in 3, 2, 1.
All right. Welcome back into Clips and Dip, where we continue to sort of dissect what this loss against two-fifths of the Denver Nuggets means. But specifically, we want to dive into some of the kinks, what's going wrong, where these problems are, possibly even spitball some solutions, because there were even some things that could have worked last game. Hint, hint, I liked what we saw from Zoo offensively. Anyways, let's talk about James Harden. Chuck, you have here in the kinks, the top king is Harden's offensive things.
Yes. So, Adam, we were just talking about pick and roll. Can I give some pick and roll stats before you go into your argument, which I'm sure makes total sense, just for some context for some people?
What argument? Oh, talking about getting in the hands of James Harden?
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. No, so the issue with James
Will is on fire with the names. If you guys aren't watching on YouTube, you've missed some legendary name tags over the last couple of weeks. I still, in the middle of the night, before I go to bed, start thinking about he sucks. Start him.
Yeah, the YouTube is a good time. We're at Clippers Podcast over on YouTube. So James Harden stats before Adam starts making his points. These help Adam's points. 12% of James Harden's shots are coming at the rim, which is a career low by 9%. That is not good. The Clippers are middle of
9%, meaning he normally would average like 13% or
21%. Sorry. Yeah. 9 percentage points. Gotcha. 9 percentage points. Okay, semantics. Everyone understands now.
Guys, we don't have time for this.
That's what I'm saying. One. Thank you.
You can only have one overly critical a-hole, and that's me.
The Clippers are middle of the pack in pick and roll frequency, which I think we all probably needs to be higher. James Harden is running as the pick and roll ball handler 40% of the time he has the ball, and that's producing 0.93 points per possession. Not good. Very much not good, but we need more of it. Adam, go off, please, because I agree with everything you're going to say.
It was like 1.5 per pick and roll the first 4 or 5 games with James Harden. And this is what's really strange. Harden's taking less and less shots by the game right now. Mm-hmm. He is taken in his last 4 games. He has taken 7 shots, 8 shots, 8 shots, and 7 shots last night. Where before that, he had taken 12, 11, 15, 12. He was in double digits, and he was looking more spry out there. When you talk about him getting downhill and getting to the basket, he had multiple plays where he turned the corner on guys, even when he smoked a layup in the fourth quarter in Denver. He looked like he had burst, and now he's looking slower. Like, is he reconditioned, or is he just not involved offensively?
I think with his burst specifically, he can do it when he can do it, if that makes sense. I think he's obviously lost some kind of step. He can do it when he wants to do it, or can do it. Reggie Jackson held him to 3 field goal attempts based on the matchup data. That is insane. Reggie Jackson should not be locking up James Harden, and they were all threes. They were all three.
No, James
I thought Harden
Harden
was
is
about to turn
locking
it
up
on,
James
too.
Harden. James Harden's locking up James Harden.
Well, it's the indecision. I mean, it's the indecision around the board. Like, I just don't get how we're this many games deep and there's still no plan of what to do when the ball is in your hands or where it's going. A hesitancy to take shots. We had like one vintage James Harden moment in the fourth where he hit that step back three, and it felt like, okay, maybe the Clippers can turn it on just enough. They can get just enough to get over the hump. It won't be a pretty win, but it's a long season. And I did not end that way.
We've talked a lot about intangibles and done some body language expert stuff and reading whether this team cares enough or put out a good enough effort last night. But there's a couple plays in particular that I don't know how else to think about them. When James Harden at the end of the third quarter rolls the ball out to try to get a 2-for-1 situation and has it taken away from him as he's watching the ball roll up the court. That's just an all-time bad. Who do you think you're going up against in this game? Like these are professional basketball players. And I get you could do it to a point, but at some point you had to pick up the basketball. Like you waited until it got to the danger zone. Like you're just tempting fate. And that's a microcosm of that game.
That's one of the more boneheaded turnovers we've seen from this Clippers team, who has had a shocking amount of boneheaded turnovers. Like has to lead the league in boneheaded turnovers.
When he's on the floor, not the first turnover that you cited, Chuck, trying to look for Ivica Zubac in the fourth, but the one later, when he falls to the floor with the basketball, it did look like he was calling for timeout and they didn't give it to him. But
yes,
the effort or urgency that I would have thought there would be from the players around him to make themselves available to receive the pass, and what the pass ended up being from James Harden was brutal.
They're all tired.
Didn't look like
everyone's tired. We had this training camp where we ran the whole time, and now 2 of those guys are gone. And now we have PJ Tucker playing 5 minutes in a game against the short. Everyone's exhausted. The rotation has been like 7 guys or 8 guys for the most part. Like I know exactly what you're talking about. For some reason, every horrible moment of this game is seared into my brain. Like I feel like it's just Minority Report. And I'm just watching all of this stuff happen again and again. Like they're tired and the effort isn't there. It's just.
But guys, they didn't look tired on the second half of a back-to-back against Dallas. That's why I feel like it's more about the effort, and they just didn't have.
Yeah. I agree. How are they tired?
I don't know. I'm grasping for any physical reason because I want it to be physical. I guess that's where I'm coming from. Is that I want it to be a physical issue. I don't want it to be more.
I see what you're saying.
I know it's this. I know it's a mental thing with how this team chooses. I know that they prepare well. I know that they prepare well. When that whistle,
I know that they are prepared well.
But when that ball goes up for some reason, when it's actual game time, it just feels like it's just gone. So I'm hoping that it's a physical thing, and we're not deep in the depths of a team that doesn't understand how to play with each other at all, despite having a pretty good plus minus with the new starters. But you know what? That's where I'm coming from with it. Is like, but I think I know the truth. The truth fucking sucks.
Isn't it a want to thing, which begs the question of leadership and where it's coming from and if it's resonating? And I'm not putting it on Coach Lue. I'm saying the players out there have to get up for these games. They have to know the situation, the circumstances. They can get back to 500. The games that are coming are going to be much tougher. You got a gift against this Denver team with all the guys that were out. It's typically you that have so many guys that have been out over the seasons. And you guys play hard in those situations. So you should know that the Denver Nuggets are going to do the same. My God, they won the championship. They got angry-ass Mike Malone, who I love. He's going to have his guys motivated.
And Reggie and DJ. It's like it goes even deeper than that. Like it's like like you were saying the last segment, we know what Reggie does. He lives for these moments.
And this is a whole nother can of worms, but I feel like this team, which again comes down to leadership in the construction of the roster, has systematically and seemingly pointedly gotten rid of any player that you would expect to be that voice in the locker room. Because I want to believe, Chuck, too, that it's a physical thing, but you look at the kind of guys that they've had, because they have had guys who can be that guy that we've seen be that guy that we know can be that guy in the locker room. And for some reason, they seem to get shown the door.
What chance is it that all these guys happen to be tired and fatigued on the same night from the opening tip in the first quarter?
Night. It was a rest night that went horribly wrong. I'm grasping at straws, man. I admitted it.
I know.
I'm a nightmare right now.
You're right.
And the roster is I can't sit here and say that it's a bad roster. None of us can say it's a bad roster because objectively
I can.
Okay, look at the Pistons and all that shit. It's a team that should be better. But the roster
is that the level of comparison for the Los Angeles Clippers, the Detroit Pistons?
I would say that it's a poorly constructed roster. It's not a bad roster. It's poorly constructed. I think there's the players are good. We have good players on our roster. But
no, fuck that. Get them, Will.
We have why am I being attacked? We're all Clippers
I don't know, but I like it.
But this is the thing. Like, we have this weird logjam at guard where Bones isn't getting any minutes, and they're not coming anytime soon. We have Russell Westbrook played 16 straight minutes last night, went minus 13 or minus 3 or something insane in those minutes.
F the box score and the plus minus last night. I mean, if you look at it, in the 12 minutes James Harden wasn't on the floor, they were a minus 15 apparently. Did it look like that eye test wise?
It looked terrible.
I do think in a 1-game plus minus situation, you got to also match it with the eye test. And Russ,
that's fair.
To his credit, made some unbelievable hustle plays. If anyone was playing hard, it was him and Ivica Zubac.
Sure, but why does he have to play 16 minutes straight? That's wild. That's fucking crazy.
Or why do they have to close with him and Harden on the court? We already acknowledged that it doesn't work. We're trying to separate them as much as possible. We're trying to have them have their own units. At the end, you just go small with them two out there, 2-on-3, Terrence Mann, and then Powell in for Terrence Mann. I don't understand it. We already figured out by the fact that they're not starting them next to one another that they probably shouldn't be out there on the court.
Well, I mean, we talked about this. We teased it coming into the segment, is this a roster construction thing? Is this a rotations thing? Because the hot seat on Ty Lue right now, it's got to be pretty warm.
I don't know if it's warm. I think from the fans it's warm because
that's a good point. From the fans, it's quite warm. It's toasty.
It's very warm. It's toasty. The issue, there's a lot of weird lineup stuff like we just talked about. If it didn't work as starters, why would it work as closers? Right?
Can I tell you about one that led to a big momentum shift in this ball game? It occurred in the second quarter. It was two guys who were only out there for 1 minute together, but during that minute they were quickly a -6, and an 8-point lead went to a 2-point lead very quickly in the second quarter. And who did it turn out to be? PJ Tucker next to Ivica Zubac, which now, as they have played 11 games on the court together,
name out of this slander, I don't feel like he deserves this stray.
Well, this is PJ Tucker slander.
Okay, great.
It's mostly about playing PJ Tucker at the 4 and just having no space to operate on the offensive end with those two guys in there, as they're both non-shooters, especially at this point. PJ Tucker, Chuck, you can speak to what he's been doing offensively in a little bit, but in their 11 games now that they have both been on the court together, 51 total minutes, Clippers have an offensive rating of 89.5 and a defensive rating of 129.2. That's a net rating of -39.7. It's not working. It's not going to start working. The only time it worked for a second was against the Pelicans, when I think Valanciunas and Williamson were out there. and
Yeah.
they might have been a +1 for a couple of minutes.
Which is
But
2 non-shooters versus
overall,
2
51
non-shooters.
minutes I'm looking at here, and it has been so bad and unsuccessful. And if you feel like you have to play PJ Tucker or get him run or get him reps, even in a game where the matchup doesn't suit him, it worked obviously against Zion Williamson at times. That was a good matchup for him. I don't know what to tell you, but you're 7-9. You have to start making these tough decisions. Guys are already not playing hard out there. Can it be much worse inside the locker room if you don't play PJ Tucker? Like, what difference does that make if you're losing to the Denver Nuggets when they just have Reggie Jackson and DeAndre Jordan?
No one
Lucy
gets
Register is
fooled.
going to be hearing about this.
Yeah,
all
we're gonna. So let's talk about PJ Tucker being a non-shooter and everything like that. PJ Tucker, it's been 1 hour and 19 minutes of playing time that he has been on the court since he has scored. An hour and 19 minutes, longer than a Hallmark movie, not as long as a feature film. He has 2 field goal attempts in that span, both of them versus the Pels. This is not sustainable. The man cannot score no points. The man cannot attempt.
Will he make it to 2 full NBA games worth of playing time without scoring a point?
He's very close. And yes, I would say yes. There's no doubt in my mind that happens with how things are going. So, and this goes back to an Adam Oslin argument. Just play Amir. If PJ Tucker is going to get DNP'd in the second half and play 5 minutes and 56 seconds versus a Nuggets team that is 3/4 of the way full or whatever, play Amir those 6 minutes. There'd be an offensive threat, somewhat more than an hour and 19 minutes and no points. Like, play Amir. Does everyone not get cool sneakers if PJ doesn't play? Like, play Amir.
Yeah, I just feel like too. I feel like too. If you're trying to change the mentality of this team, nothing is given. Like I think at a certain point, like you have to give guys the benefit of the doubt. I see that. I understand that. You in a locker room that might already be somewhat disgruntled. You got to give vets their shot. But at the same time, like nothing should be, with how poorly this team is playing, nothing should be guaranteed in terms of playing time. What works is what needs to stay out there. And it might, it might not be the popular decision or the favorite decision in the locker room, but like winning solves everything. I truly, like, even if there are issues in the locker room right now, they start winning. I just don't think that matters.
So, and if you're winning and there are guys who are unhappy about their role, then you got to move them.
Yeah,
if that's the case, you got to start making some tough decisions. I agree with Will. I'm going to use that as the tease for this episode, what he just said. It has to be earned. Now, I'll say this for PJ Tucker. He next to Daniel Tice, guys. That has been working. That is a plus 31 net.
I was wrong about that. Yeah, that's been great.
There are teams that he works against. There are lineups where he can work, but we're figuring out which ones do and which ones don't. And they keep playing him next to Ivica Zubac, and that lineup does not work.
And I would also argue that the Daniel Tice numbers with PJ Tucker are all because of Daniel Tice.
I don't feel like what happened with Tice?
I don't.
It's like what was the reasoning there?
With what? Sorry.
What happened with Tice's minutes in the second half of that game? Like what was the reasosoning there? Were you guys seeing anything that I missed in game that was like,
that's a fair point.
It makes sense to move away from him? Because I didn't, at least nothing that I noticed.
This goes into a great question because, like, I wanted 2 questions I think we got to talk about. Do we actually think it's like that Ty Lue is like to blame for the majority of this? But also, Will, to your point,
not the majority.
No.
What does Ty Lue want? After the game on Friday, he said he doesn't care about how many threes they get up. And then after the game against the Nuggets, he says we need to get up at least 36 in every game. We're seeing 5-minute shifts from PJ Tucker. And I know they're figuring stuff out with James Harden, but the bench isn't even figured out. Like, it's not like there's nothing. Again, this is a conversation we've all had the last 5 years. What is this team's identity? Like Ty Lue,
there's still no cohesion.
There's still, like, I'm grasping at straws with it being a physical issue. They're grasping at straws for some kind of identity, and we get it once every 3 games, and then it kind of changes. Like, Ty Lue's, I don't know. I don't think it's all his fault. I don't think we should fire Ty Lue or anything like that right now. But, like, it's frustrating, man.
The mixed messaging that has been seemingly going on for a little bit here it's a little bit baffling. Like, you brought up those things. I go back to, we're trying to separate them. I forget the exact verbiage, but we're trying to get Russ and Terrence Mann away from each other. But they were also in the starting lineup for the first 6 games or first 5 games with James Harden. And they're also closing last night after you separate them from being together in the starting lineup. I could see how it was situational. Russ made one of the most unbelievable hustle plays when they trapped Reggie Jackson in the corner, and he got it to a wide open Watson underneath the basket. And somehow Russ got back there and redirected that shot with under 2 minutes left. And it was outstanding, but he also missed some free throws late. He took one jumper I didn't like, but the offense wasn't running that well anyway, so I can't really blame him.
Yeah.
Russ showed up. I do want to point that out. Of all the guys that we've talked about that just did not play hard enough in this game, I didn't feel like Russ was one of them. He had some bad moments too, but nobody's going to be perfect.
Back to like the construction on the bench or like the rotations is like, I still like those closing rotations with Russ. I don't blame Russ for that. That's just a small lineup that doesn't work that well together. Like it's not on him. I feel like people think we're attacking him or something. Like he has a great motor. He had some great effort stuff. It's just like it doesn't fit. So I feel like it a little bit comes out in the wash, which again isn't his fault. But what are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do with it? You're going to continue to close with him because of the motor, like, and lose games? Like, it just doesn't really make sense to me.
And it takes away from James Harden being empowered as the number 1 ball handler late in games. Yeah. We saw how it can work against the Houston Rockets. They went on a 12-1 run. They were playing iso ball before that with Kawhi, with Paul George. And, we have this whole other way to play now where we can have a real offense and not just
we can pass.
Your turn, my turn, because of James Harden. Just play through him, play off of that. And yeah, he was bad last night, and maybe it wouldn't have made a difference. But they need to do that much more often, every night, from start to finish, when he's out there on the floor. Otherwise, why'd you bring him in?
Couldn't agree more. So the big question, because we were kind of talking about this in our group text a little bit, if things go bad in this upcoming Kings Warriors series, a 3 and 4, a back-to-back starting the day you're probably listening to this, Wednesday, what are we thinking here with the hot seat in actuality? Not Clippers Twitter, which like wants to fire Ty Lue and bring someone who's going to play Kobe Brown like 40 minutes, which, hey, I would love, but it would not be good for the team. Where are we at on that? Because at some point, if things continue to look, for lack of a better term, like complete shit, someone's going to have to get blamed. I don't think it's going to be any of the 4 Hall of Famers. They're not getting rid of those guys instantly. What do we think the level of heat on Ty Lue is if they go 1-2 in ugly fashion against this mini Bay plus Sacramento series? I know Sacramento's not part of the Bay, which is why I said that.
I think unchanged. I really like. I think that would still be too much of a knee-jerk reaction. But I understand. I understand the frustration, but
totally,
it's still like, let's say that you had a larger game sample size than even those 2 games. Like, let's say we get to the All-Star break, we're still somehow under 500. It's basically over. At that point, why bother firing him? And if it's previous to that, like, what's the plan for the upside?
We're already screwed.
Right? Who are you getting in there? Like, are you going to promote Dan Craig? I mean, I don't have anything against Dan Craig, but like, is that the move that's suddenly going to pull this group together? Like, I just don't. I hate that teams do this too. Like I really dislike when a roster has been built. It's completely like it's completely unfunctionable. Like it just doesn't fit together. And the coach is always the first one out the door. And it's just like, okay, yeah. I mean, like we see this all the time with teams that underachieve. And there are situations where you have a coach who is either unable to manage personalities in the locker room or unwilling to take input, from coaching staff, from other folks. And that, to me, obviously warrants a firing. But, like, I just don't have any empirical evidence that Ty Lue is doing that. Does he favor certain guys? Does he favor a certain position? I mean, certainly. But I just don't know. I don't have a good answer for you for who the alternative is.
Yeah, totally.
Well, we brought up the mixed messaging and saying one thing but doing another, or doing one thing and saying another thing. He just recently came out and said how much small ball hasn't worked the last couple of seasons, and they're only using it as a last resort. And then Ivica Zubac gets taken out with 3:11 left last night, while he was having one of the better games of any of the Clippers.
Yes,
to Russell Westbrook.
This was Ivica Zubac's best game of the season, and I'm bummed that it was wasted.
Of course,
I'm not even, me, I'm not even like the Zoo bandwagon driver like that.
Some of it was like all those offensive rebounds were off of his own misses at the basket.
Andre Drummond special. You got to put him away.
They love it.
Yeah, a little bit inflated. The numbers are skewed there. But for the most part, he was playing hard. There were a couple of possessions, though, where even Zoo looked like he got lost or checked out. And to Coach Lue's credit, they're down 6 when he took him out. It's not like Zoo was making a difference in that fourth quarter. He was on the court when they were getting down. He and Reggie Jackson, he and James Harden on a Reggie Jackson, one of the pick and rolls that they abused the Clippers with, they both blitzed him. He bounces it to DeAndre Jordan. Neither of them are there. There was so much miscommunication going on. It just looked like a team that had been thrown together tonight or last night. Yeah. But look, the expectations are high. I like Coach Lue a lot. I think, maybe some of the fires he started himself. Yeah. He's the only one that knows how to put out all these fires too. I think he's the guy. I don't know how you get better getting rid of Coach Lue. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to lean into defense more. He has said that he's not controlling the defense right now. Yeah. The defense has been on Dan Craig. So maybe give him credit for that. In Denver.
Like, I mean, that's become how he's moved up in the old organization.
Miami, right? Was Spoelstra? I forget. But
and Denver.
Coach Lue hasn't been as involved with the defense. Now, the offense is his responsibility, though. And he said last night that he takes responsibility for the offense. Then he corrected himself, and the defense too. But he knows it's the offense. It's his job to make this thing work with these guys, with this level of talent. And there's a ton of pressure there. And in that article with Chris Haynes, he said, this is my toughest coaching job. And it certainly has been so far. And they have to figure it out offensively this week, really. Because if you don't show up against Sacramento, you're going to get beat by 30. You're going to get beat by 40. If this team isn't playing faster, like he criticizes them for often and criticized them for that last night, they're taking on the Kings. If they can't hang at all with their speed, and they will make you play at their pace, the Clippers are going to get run up and down the court. I don't know what that's going to look like. We talk about Reggie Jackson, what he did. I think Dr. Schaap said this earlier today on Lob to Jam. What's De'Aaron Fox and Sabonis going to do in the pick and roll if they can't correct these things now? So this is a real gut check time for the entire ball club. But no, I don't want to see Coach Lue gone.
Yeah. Also Dan Craig, Heat.
I fucked up. We're cutting that out of the podcast.
It doesn't matter. I don't think it's that big a deal. So that's what we cut out of the podcast.
Oh, it's good to laugh, guys.
So now we need one positive thing. We're going into a hellish 3-4. It's terrible. We're not going to give predictions on it. I think the player of the game is going to be, I don't know, Amir Khan.
Effort.
Player of the season.
Player
of the series, I mean.
Yeah, player of the series. I don't know. PJ Tucker, he's going to score. He's going to score 1 point over these 3 games and prove me wrong.
I just am not. I don't think he is that much of a detriment in the right matchups because of his limitations on offense. I think he's still good enough defensively with the right lineups that he has serviceability, that he has utility.
Give him the Sendarius stint. Guard an inbounds pass well. I don't know if you remember, Sendarius stint is a term that Cole Hoops, shout out Cole Hoops, we talked about. Sendarius Thornwell used to get put in for like 1.2 seconds every couple of games, just as like a defender. So
did you guys ever see me pull a receipt once on Sendarius Thornwell?
I have not, but I'm not surprised.
I do not keep tabs. I do not keep receipts on the receipts that you keep.
This one was notable, though, on a former Clippers player who I really like, now playing in Europe. But he was on South Carolina Gamecocks. They beat Duke, I remember, in the playoffs or in the tournament. And I had been quoting him about something, and this kind of applies to what we saw last night. But he said when he was sent down to the G League, like, you don't want to go down there. Those guys are wolves. Those guys are crazy. They're ravenous because they're all scratching and clawing over one another to try to get called up. And I quoted him about that, and for whatever reason, he said I didn't say that, so that I pulled the video and at his media day. But last night, you had a bunch of Denver Nuggets getting extra time out there and guys having green lights, and all of a sudden, yeah, they're going full out effort. You had to know they were going to give the best effort because they have a shot to show off for Mike Malone.
And a well-drafted team. A lot of guys who they drafted, not very high, given the team's success, were contributors last night and very good at basketball. Take that with what you listeners, take that how you want to take it.
I like that point though, Adam. I mean, they're like all those guys had something to play for. Like, yeah,
absolutely.
It might not have, meant a whole lot in the expanse of the season.
Not to the Clips, yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to be clear, I'm not absolving Coach Lue. There's just so much blame to go around right now that it's not that simple, or that's the solution to saving this season. I don't think taking away one of the best schematic, strategic guys in the NBA, one of the best tacticians, is wise for a team that's going to have to figure out how to balance all of this. And that's what the problem has been. They can't balance it right now. If one guy's hot, another guy's cold. If one thing's going right, something else is going wrong. And I expressed my concerns about this after the first 2 games. I think after they lost to New York and Brooklyn, and everybody was like, yeah, Adam, why are you so down about the Clippers? Like, what's going on? If they've lost Adam, then things must be really bad for this team. And it was only 2 games into the James Harden experiment. But the one thing that popped up for me late at night, I said, I had this terrifying thought, Chuck and I were doing the podcast, was that, can you really keep all these guys in rhythm? Is it as rudimentary as there's only one ball and nobody's ever had 4 guys that are this ball dominant and are at their best with the ball in their hands be successful in the NBA at the highest level? And there's a reason to be really concerned. So far, it's been like that.
All right. Well, I was going to kick it to Adam for the final positive thing for this episode.
That wasn't happening today.
Will, do you have a positive thing we can leave these listeners with as we head into this hellish 3-4?
Maybe we can lure Mike D'Antoni not to replace Ty Lue, but just as a consultant. We need somebody offensively who's going to move some things around.
You want him in a big cloak up in the rafters, just looking.
Yes.
Okay, I will take this, I guess. I am choosing to believe with my head firmly buried deep in the sand at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, November 28th, that the Clippers are going to go 2-1 over this trip. I think they're maybe going to get their asses kicked by the Kings, but I think they'll beat the Warriors twice. I have no option but to believe that because we need it to happen. They have to go 2-1. I didn't mention March once on this episode. I'm just saying. I didn't even bring that up with the rotation stuff. Oh, I know, because I waited. I didn't want to. You gotta leave the good stuff for the end, which is why I'm talking about it now. We got another 25 minutes to get into this.
Can I kneecap your positivity real quick?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, do it. Do it.
Sure,
everybody's always like, Adam's such a homer. Adam's always talking about the positives and spinning. And I had a name tag last time out about being a mouthpiece. My level of concern for Kawhi Leonard went from 1.5 to 3 after this last game.
Percentage
points? It doubled. Okay. Out of 10. Level of concern for Kawhi Leonard, how he's moving, how he's looking. I think it's just fatigue. Sure. Like we see with LeBron or anybody who's playing heavy minutes. But I had some concern about him trying to get by guys late in the fourth quarter against Denver. I'm not convinced of anything yet, but it's just something I'm going to keep a close eye on.
All right. Well, I hope everyone watches for that too during this hellish 3-4 that we have. Watch it with that keen eye, maybe with some optimism that he's going to get it back. That could be a good way to look at it. Let's hope that he gets it back, right?
Yeah. I think, look, if they beat Sacramento tomorrow,
guys.
I don't know.
They beat Sacramento tomorrow.
Here's the problem. Excited. We went back to this place. No, we went back to this place as fans of the Clippers where you don't know which team is going to show up every night. When we thought they had turned a corner and we thought there would be more consistency, and we're right back in that pit.
They've turned 4 corners. That's where we're at.
Daytona.
They've turned 4 corners. We're on a fucking racetrack, taking 4 rights or lefts or whatever they do. All right. Anyway, we're gonna have some double dips coming your way. I don't know if the audience should be happy or sad that neither of us was able to get on the radio last night, because I know that Will had some heaters.
I wanted to catch Will in the eye of the storm. I was so disappointed.
Well, here's what's gonna happen tomorrow. If what you two think is going to happen, I'm choosing to have hope.
I have hope.
I know, I'm fucking with you. If what maybe could happen tomorrow happens, it's all Will's. It's all Will's. And I will be very excited to listen to that on AM 570.
Will's only coming on in losses now. Is that what you're saying?
No, horrific losses. This is the worst losses. Not a normal, not a 6-point, hey, we were right there. A bad loss. That's what does a competitive loss do for you? Can I sell you on a competitive loss? Does that do anything for you? No, nothing. Absolutely nothing. And then next full pod sometime later this week, maybe Friday. I'm going to Las Vegas to watch a wrestling tournament, which, hey, that'll be a good time. Reviews help. Will, where can these people find this podcast? Auditory wise or visually for the freaks who like to watch?
So you can listen to this podcast wherever you get your podcast. We're on Google Podcasts, we're on Amazon Music, we're on Stitcher, we're on Deezer, we're on, am I missing one? Apple Music. That's a big one. Apple Podcasts. You can also watch this sometimes live, sometimes live, where we don't cut out things like me saying incorrectly naming where Dan Craig was working. But you can watch this over on YouTube. We also do live streams on Twitter. That's @ClippersPod. On YouTube, of course, it's @ClippersPodcast. So confusing nomenclature that are really hard to find. Anyways, that about does it. Adam, you wanna send us out?
I love you guys. I love all our listeners, Clipper Nation. Like, we're in this together still. And Lord knows we've seen worse. We have.
Very true.
Now is not the time, 16 games in, to give up on this team, even after how bad of a loss that was. I still can't believe the way they bounced back against Dallas after the way they lost to the Pelicans. So there is precedent. There is some recent history of this team snapping back and having a really great performance. How about that, Chuck?
That's all I wanted. It's wonderful to hear. We will talk to all of you very soon. We hope you're having a good after Thanksgiving week. And as always, let's go Clips.